Good morning. I'm Jim Peters. My pronouns are he and him. I'm a member of the worship committee, and it's my pleasure to welcome one and all to this online and in-person service of the Unitarian Society of New Haven. Thank you for being here. Thank you for showing up, making yourself part of this gathered community this morning. If you're new to this place, a special welcome to you and an invitation to join us in the social hall after the service for refreshments and conversation. Members of our connection team are available before and after services to answer any questions you may have about this congregation or about Unitarian Universalism. And if you have younger people with you this morning, know there's a space in the back with activities and comfortable seating for your use if that would be helpful. We welcome all ages into this worship space. Some announcements for today, and please, as always, refer to the weekly email newsletter and your order of service document for more information and extra announcements. Today, right here from 12 to 2 in the sanctuary, you're invited to join film producer Debbie Elkin and Elaine Kolb for a special social cinema presentation, Thoughts on Medical-Assisted Suicide, a 35-minute film exploring the impact assisted suicide laws have on disabled, BIPOC, and low-income communities. There will be an LGBTQ plus task force welcome in room 208 up the stairs from 12 to 1 today as well. Also this morning, the USNH Turnpike players are having a call for volunteers in an organizational meeting at 11:45 up in the Children's Chapel, the end of the hall. Please come and see what all the excitement is about. If you can't come, reach out to Joni Messner, Amy Glick, or Bob Genzano. And finally, the USNH tag sale with a twist will be on October 4th. See Kathleen Shoemaker in the social hall to find out how you can empty your closets and support the fundraiser. Email tagsale@usnh.org if you have questions, or please check the newsletter. And now, as I invite Jonathan Dean to the pulpit for our call to worship, I invite us all to settle into our seats, be sure to place our devices into worship mode, and to be here now.
Good morning. My name is Jonathan Dean. My pronouns are he, them. I would like Jim to light our chalice as I read our call to worship. The call to worship today is by Reverend Michelle LaGrave, a Unitarian minister and a social justice advocate. May your call be awakened. We come to religious community from many paths with diverse needs. If you've come here seeking comfort, may your pain be soothed. If you've come here looking for answers, may you find new questions. If you come here seeking purpose, may your call be awakened. If you've come here hoping to build a new way, may the path be open here before you. Please let us prepare to sing our opening hymn, number 1000, in our turquoise hymnals, Morning Has Come. It is at this time you may move forward to place a shell in the water if you have a concern or struggle. May the water symbolize the warmth of this community surrounding and supporting you. You may also light a candle of celebration, hope, or joy. May the flames of these candles illuminate the path we are on in these most unsettled times. Reverend Stephen has an announcement.
Just before Bill starts to play the hymn, just to let you know that devoted member Bill Gower died this Thursday at the age of 97. And we'll be giving you lots more information, but we extend our warmest condolences to his family, his children, and to his many friends here. Bill was a lovely, honest, and true man, and we will all miss him. He was an amazing man. So please come forward. Jesse, thank you for lighting that. We light that for Bill.
My friends, what a joy it was this week to learn that Amanda Detmer-Erard has become a living kidney donor. She had her operation this past Tuesday, am I right, James? She had her operation this past Tuesday and was able to give a kidney to someone in need, which is an incredible act of generosity, aligned with her principles, aligned with the life that we celebrate. I also wish to wish James and Amanda a happy 17th wedding anniversary. So, one ritual that has opened up our year in religious education since before I came to this congregation in 2012 is the fruit communion. The original idea of the fruit communion was quite simple. Fruits are unique. They come in all different shapes, sizes, flavors, colors. And one of our preferred things to do with them is to bring them together. When we bring them together, we do so knowing that there's going to be some contrast between them. And so in the fruit communion, what we do is we seek a binding agent. For many years, we used melted chocolate to bring those fruits together into glorious harmony. Lately, we've been using honey or maple syrup out of respect for those of us who are vegan, out of respect for those of us with different allergies. The idea, though, is whatever it is that you use to bring them together, it represents love. The love that we bring into this space, that no matter what our differences, and as important as our individuality is, that love binds us together and sweetens the entire fruit salad. Now, growing up, I thought I knew all the fruits. I grew up here in New England, and so I was very well versed in apples and pears, blackberries and raspberries, peaches. But the more I began to travel, the more places I visited, the more I began to realize that the fruit salad is actually a lot bigger, a lot more diverse than any of us could have imagined. When I moved out to Arizona to teach, I discovered one day when I went camping on the top of a bluff, and a rainstorm came over and blew all of our supplies off the top of that bluff, leaving us without any fruit or food or tents or sleeping bags. A friend of mine went over to a cactus and cut off this red fruit off of it that I later learned in Costa Rica we call it pitaya. Some people here just call it, I can't remember the name. We cut it open and we pulled out some of the spines, and I discovered that it had the most beautiful, beautiful flavor, juicy. When I went to India, I discovered that there was a fruit that was about 3 times as big as my head, called jackfruit, that you could eat, and it had such a smooth texture to it. I had never imagined that you could eat silk. It was incredible. I remember going to Costa Rica and going hiking with Sandra, and she got very, very excited when she saw this one particular fruit. I thought it was a jackfruit at first. It was huge, it was green, it was spiky. It looked like the worst basketball ever. And when we got to it, she said, "You can cut this open and fry it, and it will taste like bread." Who would have ever thought when I was a kid that there would be a fruit that you could eat like bread and spread butter on? There's so much beauty out there, my friends. There's so much individuality. There's so many different sizes, shapes, colors, textures that the human family brings to the earth in the same way that all the different trees and bushes and even bromeliads bring to the fruit salad. So this morning, I'm going to invite everyone who is under the age of 19 to come out, and bring your parents if you'd like. We're going to exit out as we sing out this door out here and go out to the front lawn, and we are going to celebrate a fruit communion together. And we're going to bind all this delicious fruit, plus any fruit you may have brought from home, with the sweet love that we bring to this space. Anyone who is a child or a youth, let's exit now as we sing them out. Go now in peace. Go now in peace. Go now in peace. May the spirit of love surround you everywhere, everywhere you may go. Go now in peace. Go now in peace. May the spirit of love surround you everywhere, everywhere you may go.
We're going to have a great time in here. My friends, covenant lies at the center of how Unitarian Universalists gather together in community. We're united not by one set of beliefs, but by the promise we make about how we will be together, how we'll treat each other, and how we'll seek to mend relationships when we fall short. Each week, we recite together a brief version of our covenant. I encourage you to read the whole one on our website. While the following words express our intentions in writing, our true covenant lives and breathes in our actions. Please join me now in reciting the words that appear in your order of service or in the chat on the live stream. We covenant together to create and nurture a culture of respect and kindness, and to engage in the spiritual and everyday practice of loving more generously. To this end, we will strive to be open, value differences, listen deeply, use kind language, speak our truths, work with conflict, seek humor and joy.
Good morning. Attendance has been fantastic, unbelievable, and that encourages me. There's no question about it. Should encourage all of you. But I do have a friend who, I'm sorry to say, is not a huge supporter of going to church. And there's a very sad story that goes with it. Because his mother went to him and woke him up and said, "You are going to church this morning." And the son said, "I'm not going to church. I don't like church, and the people there don't like me." She said, "I'm going to give you 3 reasons why you're going to church this morning. 1, I'm your mother. 2, you're 57 years old. And 3, you're the minister." I've been waiting a year to tell that joke, so. This summer, Liz and I were invited up to Tanglewood, and I rediscovered the music of Arlo Guthrie, and then by extension to his father, Woody Guthrie. And I encountered a quote last week that really struck me in this horrific week. Woody Guthrie said a long time ago, "There ain't but 2 things in this world can cause trouble. One is greed, the other one is fear. And there ain't but one remedy for both, and that is love, friendship." In the silence that follows today, I invite you to think deep and think hard about a friend whose presence in your life fends off fear and helps hold you up. And I would also like you to think how you might be in the week to come such a friend as this. Let us hold silence together. May this be so. Jim?
Friends, each week we invite each other to participate in supporting the ongoing work of USNH. Ushers will be in the aisles facilitating the passing of the offering plates. You can refer to the order of service sheet for other ways to donate. In whatever way you choose to support USNH in whatever amount, please know that your contribution is sincerely appreciated.
Please join me in reading our responsive reading, number 437, in our gray hymnals. Let Us Worship by Kenneth Patton. Let us worship with our eyes and ears and fingertips. We feed our eyes upon the mystery and revelation in the faces of our brothers and sisters. We seek to understand the shyness behind arrogance, the fear behind pride, the tenderness behind clumsy strength, and the anguish behind cruelty. Let us worship, not in bowing down, not with eyes closed and stopped ears. Life comes with singing and laughter, with tears and confiding, with a rising wave too great to be held in the mind and heart and body to those who have fallen in with love and life. Let us worship and let us learn to love. I now invite the choir up for our anthem.
It's a delicate balance for any minister to respond to what happens in a particular week and also have intentionality in terms of what you want to talk about, what you want to preach about, give word to the musicians as to what kind of things that the choir can prepare. There's a balance. So late in the summer, I determined that I wanted to talk about masked agents of the federal government taking people off the streets of America. That's what I wanted to talk about. It's happening all around us. It's happening across the country. And it is changing us as a country. And I thought, well, do I need to change in the context of this very dark week we have all gone through together? George Orwell said a long time ago that the restatement of the obvious is our first duty. And this is never more true than in the spiritual realm and in our common life. So let's just restate the obvious. Violence is wrong, is reprehensible, is inexcusable, and it metastasizes. That's the obvious. But what else can we say? Well, we can remember that 12 weeks ago, the head of the Minnesota House of Representatives, Melissa Hortman, and her husband were shot and killed, and another state representative and his wife were both wounded by a masked man who had a list of 70 Democratic politicians in his pocket. So if you've been hearing all week long that violence goes in only one direction, that is not a restatement of the obvious. That is a lie. Violence is wrong. And I decided in the end that I wouldn't change what I wanted to talk about. Because if you really stop and think about it, what's going on all around us, when masked representatives take people from the street, from car washes, from parking lots, at Home Depot, at schools, when they come to the courthouse because they've been asked to do so, to fulfill their legal obligations as they seek to become citizens, and masked agents are waiting in the elevator and in the anterooms to take them as soon as they've seen a judge. That is a form of political violence. And most certainly is a form of intimidation and fear. And yes, it is changing us. And speaking of masking, the Supreme Court of the United States is using their so-called shadow docket to mask their intention by issuing silent decisions that either make a decision or hold off a decision and allow the government to plow forward. Justice Kavanaugh said that the way you look and the way you talk at the bus stop or the parking lot, wherever you may be found, can be, in his words, a relevant fact when considered with other salient factors. To which I would also add that that is unconstitutional. But you know what? I'm not a pundit, I'm not a legal scholar. This ultimately is a very powerful, specific issue that we have to deal with as citizens, but it's also very much a moral issue, a conundrum that cuts across all of human history and therefore belongs here and belongs to us. And when you hear the words of U.S. Army veteran George Reyes, who was a 25-year-old Iraqi veteran who was plucked up, he told agents he was a citizen, but they wouldn't let him get back to his car to get his wallet. And agents knelt upon his back and on his neck. It is the George Floyd moment there. He was put in a jail cell for 3 days without access to a lawyer or a phone, no appearance before a jury. He wasn't able to wash off the tear gas sprayed in his face. George says, no one deserves to be treated like this, to have no rights, that this can just mask up and take someone off the streets, no questions asked, and you're just gone. And if they feel like it, they can just take you. No one told me what I was there for. I thought no one knew where I was. That I was literally going to just disappear in there and never see my kids again. Just get lost in the system, he said. It happens. It happens a lot. Well, George Reyes is right. It's happening a lot. More than 44,000, 17,000 plane flights, and we're paying for it. As a matter of fact, in the big, beautiful bill, 10,000 more agents are going to be hired and put on the streets. And then augmented by National Guard troops in major cities in America. Yeah, America's changing. And what are some of those cities? Well, my son and grandchildren live, daughter-in-law in Chicago. And someone at a stop was killed 2 days ago. They're going into Boston. And in the late 1850s, hey, nothing's new, with the uniting of the fugitive slave law passed in Congress and the Dred Scott decision in the United States Supreme Court, people were plucked up from the streets of Boston, placed on ships, and returned south, whether they had ever freed themselves from enslavement or not. You could be a free slave and be taken south because there was no due process. That's 1858. So how's it going to go in Boston this time? How's it going to go in Memphis, where Martin Luther King offered his life when he went to support the garbage collectors of Memphis? And this is happening with agents under masks. Can't see their faces. They don't show badges. And they say they do it to protect themselves. Who are they protecting themselves from? Us. Citizens who have cell phones, I guess, I don't know. But they act as if there are no restraints. Instead of due process, there is chaos. Well, how do we protect ourselves from our protectors? How do we keep our streets safe from those under masks? Operation without responsibility and operating in anonymity, that is impunity. Our Senator Chris Murphy says masked officers can be just a cover for illegality and brutality. And I think our senator's right. That the rule of law can devolve into the rule of intimidation. So we desperately need to come to our collective senses and our common humanity. That's stating the obvious. I'm bringing coals to Newcastle here, I get that. But I ask, who are we? Emerson, a long time ago, at the time of that fugitive slave law I alluded to earlier, said, "We live in a world where everyone wears a mask to cover up their true intentions." And that's true too. And none of this need be. It would be naive of me and short-sighted to say, as you often hear, "Oh, this is not who we are." But if it's happening, it's who we are, but we need not stay that way, and it need not be that way. And the struggle continues, a very long struggle that goes across all of human history. It's a funny thing about being masked. It's easier to disappear people. That's true. But what else disappears under the mask? Well, yes, you could say the Constitution. That's true. But I would also add humanity and decency. This is a mask that we must set down and tear away. Yes, for the good of others, but also for the sake of anyone who prowls our streets under authority, because they are being changed too. And what are we about at our core when our masks can be stripped away, when we can look at each other face to face? That's why this is a spiritual issue. That's why I'm preaching about it. That's why I stuck with it. Because I don't want to just talk about political violence. I want to talk about what can be spiritual renewal, compassion. Maybe underneath the mask there's just raw power. But one way or another, we've got to get real. We must be revealed to one another face to face. We will never see each other as perfect. But we are capable of understanding. We are capable of connection, of cooperation in the shared enterprise of living beyond raw survival. Carl Jung said, who knew a thing or two about shedding masks, said, as far as we can discern, the sole purpose of human existence is to kindle a light in the darkness of mere being. Mere being. Masks are very tricky. Now, I would never pretend that we don't need masks from time to time, or even enjoy them, or employ them in needful ways. The thing about masks is they are very sticky, and we can hide there, and we can get paralyzed there, and they can grow attached to us and we to them. It's an ancient Egyptian story, which I encountered this week. I thought maybe it was better than Freud, so I'm going to share it. An old Egyptian myth that said that when we die, we are weighed in the underworld duat. It talks about the weight and dangers of what lies masked in our human hearts, because your heart is going to be weighed in Ma'at, hall of truth and of harmony and of justice. And when that's being done, your heart is being weighed against the feather of purity and balance. And if your heart is as light as a feather, you may move on. But if you are burdened by the corrosive and corruptions of unresolved pain and regrets and dishonesty, guess what?
Ahmet, who is part lion, part crocodile, and part hippo, gets to devour you. I'd rather move on. Unmasking, therefore, is a lightening of the soul. It is an unbinding and unburdening. It is a simple idea. Not an easy one, but a simple idea. There are resolutions to make these agents go with badges, go with their names, go without masks. But you know what? If you need a mask to cover your face, then it's safe to say that everything inwardly is out of balance, and justice is not being served. I remember an old idea when I was a kid, that to be a first responder of any sort was a life of honor and sacrifice. Because yes, you would be facing dangers, but you did so under a badge that said protect and serve. Your name, therefore, was attached to that badge. And your training and your dedication and even your willingness to lay down your life, this defined your purpose. You were, in all cases, sometimes given a uniform, but not a mask. And in human history, that drive to power, to racial and national religious superiority, it's real. We've heard it all of our lives. When I was also very young, I heard the idea, and I know it'll be familiar to you, of the Lutheran pastor Martin Niemöller, who actually had been, in the late 1930s, a supporter of the rise of Nazism, and even voted for Hitler. But during the war, he changed. He grew. He became more courageous to the point where he was imprisoned. And he said these words, and I know you've heard them before. When the Nazis came for the communists, I kept quiet because I wasn't a communist. And when the Nazis came for the trade unionists, I kept quiet because I wasn't a trade unionist. And when the Nazis came for the Social Democrats, I kept quiet because I wasn't a Social Democrat. And when they came for the Jews, I kept quiet because I was not a Jew. And then they came for me, and there was no one left to protest. And it never entered my young mind that I would ever have to read those words from this pulpit or any pulpit in America today. We must demand in all ways and in all times the unmasking of all the tools of division and domination, any of the hidden motives and drives that can be revealed. They can be healed. Yeah, Hitler shows us ours, but also unbelievable triumphs of how corruptions and corrosions of the spirit were overwhelmed and transformed. I am not naive enough to think any of this will be easy. But I wanted to start this church year by saying this is our task and our purpose. It is a very high spiritual purpose. To help the mask drop away. To be able to see each other in our society face to face. And on the surface, the masking of agents roaming our streets is just a signal of a much larger issue. It's a problem of such high moral dimensions that it begs all of us together to assert our own power in response. Perhaps this is the power of love and simple compassion, but it is power nonetheless. Nothing less will do than the harnessing of this force that nullifies and transforms lower kinds of power with an unmasking. Also words I remember deep down in my childhood, St. Paul's acute psychological analysis of love. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices in the truth. And it always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. For now, we see in a glass darkly, but then, face to face. Now I know in part, but I shall know even as I also am known. This ability to see each other face to face does require the mask going down so that we may have a common road forward. James Baldwin said, "Love takes off the masks that we fear that we cannot live without, and also know that we cannot live within. If we are to share this life, if we are to find each other, if we are to protect each other, if we are to make our streets safe and our lives coherent, then we will understand this long struggle to see what's under our masks. Because underneath there's only one face. There's only one reality, and ultimately, there's only one destiny. To deny this is to refuse to see each other and to deny simple humanity. Let's unmask. Amen. In deciding what hymn we would sing, I thought, let's go with an old traditional one that's pretty rousing, that reminds us of what our forebears used to get into, the trouble they had and the trouble we may have with them. 3, 5, 8, rank by rank, again we stand. 3, 5, 8. Stand, for the four winds gathered hither, of the hallowed walls demand, whence we come and how and hither, in the echoes ring to warn or cheer. Saint to steer all Right, for Jim to address our frame, and let us say these words together found in your order of service. Carry forth this chalice flame, its illumination into our daily lives, its sustaining warmth into our relationships, the light of reason shining beyond these walls. May we carry the fire of hope in our hearts this day and in the week to come. And now may peace, which passes all understanding, keep your hearts and minds in the knowledge of love. And may this peace be yours this day. You're on.